Okay, so get this. Have you heard about all this Nibiru stuff? It's about to get even weirder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's this article, and just the title is unbelievable.
What is it?
Okay, so it's in Greek, but get this. It translates to deadly change in Nibiru's behavior shocks Russian scientists. Can you handle the truth?
Wow.
Right. And it gets wilder. It claims some Russian scientists, get this, down in Antarctica.
Antarctica.
Yeah, they've seen Nibiru completely switch up what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's rotating the opposite way now.
The opposite way.
Uh-huh. And its orbit's all messed up and it's gotten even bigger.
So what? Nibiru's been hitting the gym.
That's what it sounds like. I know what you're thinking. Here we go again, more Nibiru.
Yeah.
But honestly, even if you know all about this Planet X stuff, this article is wild.
What else does it say?
Okay, so they're saying Nibiru's little act could cause a surge in asteroids.
Asteroids, okay.
And this is the best part, it could maybe even flip Earth's axis.
Wow, so it's like a cosmic disaster movie.
I know, right? So we've got our expert here to break it all down for us. What's real and what's, totally bonkers.
Well, I think it's really interesting how Nibiru just has this hold over people, Like for years, it's been a staple in conspiracy theories and pop culture, always as this rogue planet ready to smash into Earth or cause some crazy gravitational mayhem.
It really is. It's like the ultimate bad boy in space. But let's get back to this article.
Sure.
It says these Russian scientists have seen some pretty big changes in Nibiru. Like it's gone from spinning counterclockwise to clockwise. Its orbit has shifted.
Okay.
And, get this, it's actually gained mass. So is that even possible?
Well, that's the thing. As cool as it all sounds, the big question is there any proof?
Yeah, like show me the data.
Exactly. The scientific community doesn't actually acknowledge Nibiru as a real thing.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of astronomers think it's a hoax. And, it's fueled by people not understanding the data or maybe not quite getting how physics works.
Okay, so let's say, just for fun, that there was a giant hidden planet. Wouldn't we have seen it by now? Like with all our telescopes and space exploration, what do we use to find these things anyway?
You're right. We do have some really amazing tools these days to see what's out there.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about giant telescopes, both on the ground and in space. They're constantly scanning the skies, looking for even the faintest signals and mapping out how celestial objects move. If there was something the size of a planet out there, especially one as crazy as Nibiru, we would have seen at least something by now.
So it's not just a matter of scientists missing a memo, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about astronomers all over the world constantly collecting data, and nobody's raised a red flag about a rogue planet.
That's the thing about science. It's not about secrets or agendas. It's about sharing the data, looking at each other's findings, and agreeing based on the evidence.
Right.
If there was real evidence for Nibiru, everyone would be talking about it. But instead, it's pretty quiet from the people we trust, and we just hear noise from, sources that are less credible.
Okay, that makes sense. So, let's talk about these dangers this article is talking about. They're saying that Nibiru's weird behavior could lead to a ton of asteroids hitting Earth.
Okay.
A gravitational pull so strong it could make our planet flip over.
Wow.
And just overall widespread chaos.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I mean, talk about a bad day for planet Earth.
Yeah, it sounds pretty bad.
Yeah.
But let's break it down a little.
Okay.
Asteroid impacts are something to be concerned about.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to believe Nibiru is going to make things worse.
Okay.
And Earth's magnetic field, the thing that protects us from all that crazy stuff from the sun, it's always changing.
Right.
That's just normal.
Okay, so it's not like Nibiru is out there with like a giant slingshot just flinging asteroids at us.
No, nothing like that. And as for Earth flipping over because of Nibiru's gravity, that's super unlikely.
Really?
Yeah, what we know about how planets move and interact just doesn't support that idea. It'd be like trying to slip a bowling ball by just like weaving a tennis ball near it. It just wouldn't happen.
All right, so no planet flipping, got it.
Right.
But you have to admit, there is something about these Nibiru theories that grabs people's attention. It's like a mix of scientific curiosity and, that end of the world kind of excitement.
Yeah.
Why do you think this kind of stuff resonates with people so much?
That's a really interesting point. I think it's not just about the science or lack of science, but what these ideas represent, like on a deeper level.
Okay.
Like, think about it. Nibiru fits into this whole long history of apocalyptic beliefs.
Right. Like all those stories about the world ending or a new age starting, usually with some big event that, like, shakes everything up.
Exactly. And those beliefs tend to show up during times when things are uncertain or there are big changes,
Yeah.
offering a way to understand things when it feels like everything's going crazy. It's almost like a way to deal with those what-if fears.
So Nibiru is like those guys on the street corner holding signs saying the end is near.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Except instead of a guy, it's a planet we can't even prove is real.
Yeah, you could say that. It's like taking all that anxiety we have about the future, whether it's climate change or politics, or just feeling like things are moving too fast, and projecting all that onto this outside force that we can't control.
Okay, that actually makes me feel better. Like, it's easier to blame a planet than face the fact that we might be messing things up ourselves.
Uh-huh, right.
But another thing that's been bugging me about this article, why Russia? Why Antarctica? It feels like they're trying to make it even more mysterious.
Yeah, it does.
Like they're using that old Cold War paranoia.
It's definitely intriguing. Conspiracy theories usually play on this idea that there's some, like, secret truth being hidden by, the people in charge. And this whole idea of a bunch of scientists finding something huge in a remote place.
Right.
Well, that totally fits that narrative.
So it's like they're saying, hey, over here, I've got the real story about a hidden planet. Don't tell anyone. The government doesn't want you to know. Like, it's some big secret.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about how the internet makes everything spread so fast.
Oh, right.
Whether it's true or totally made up, information explodes online and reaches everyone immediately.
Yeah.
And with those algorithms, designed to keep us clicking, well, dramatic stories, especially those us versus them ones, really get amplified.
It's like they're throwing a party for everyone, and you don't even need an invitation, You could bring facts or just random thoughts. It doesn't matter. But how are we supposed to know what's real and what's not?
It's a great question. In the age of information overload, knowing what to believe, especially with something like Nibiru, is a challenge for all of us.
It's like we're all armchair astronomers now. And
Right.
sometimes it feels like common sense has been, shot into space. But even if we're debunking this whole Nibiru thing, I gotta say, the idea of a hidden planet is pretty cool. It reminds us just how much we don't know about space.
Totally. That's where the real excitement is. Not in chasing these wild claims, but in exploring the incredible universe that we know exists. We're talking billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars. And who knows how many planets. The possibilities are just endless.
Right. Forget Nibiru. We have black holes that warp time and space, neutron stars denser than anything you can imagine, and planets orbiting other stars that might even have life on them. That's way cooler than some mythical planet that's going to destroy us, right?
Definitely. And new discoveries are being made all the time. There are new telescopes being built, new data being analyzed, and scientists are always pushing the boundaries of what we know. And anyone can be a part of that journey. You don't need to be a scientist to appreciate how amazing space is.
You're right. It's like we have front row seats to the best show ever, and all you need is a little curiosity. But before we wander off into the cosmos, there's one thing we haven't talked about yet.
What's that?
We've talked about the lack of evidence for Nibiru and the psychology behind why people are so drawn to these theories. But what about the downsides of actually believing in this stuff? Like, can misinformation be harmful?
Oh, that's a really important point and something we definitely need to talk about. Well, it's easy to think that Nibiru and all these conspiracy theories are just harmless fun. The truth is, when people make decisions based on inaccurate or false information, it can have some serious effects in the real world. And sometimes those effects can be pretty scary.
Okay, that's interesting. We're going from cosmic curiosity to real-world danger.
We are. It's a really important topic.
I'm hooked.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be pretty scary when you think about the impact that has on people, like emotionally.
Right.
If you really believe something bad's about to happen because of some planet,
Yeah.
that can lead to a lot of anxiety, fear, even despair.
Yeah, if I thought the world was ending because of some, giant space rock, I'd be freaking out.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that kind of fear make people want to actually do something about it? Like maybe get serious about climate change or, I don't know, solve some of those big problems we have?
It would be great if it worked that way, but being afraid doesn't always lead to the best solutions,
I guess so.
And with something like Nibiru, which is, let's face it, pretty unlikely, that fear can turn into some unhealthy things.
Like what kind of things?
Well, some people might just, shut themselves off from everyone, isolate themselves from friends and family, and spend all their time preparing for this doom that's probably not coming. Others might fall for scams or bad information, spend all their money on survival gear, or join groups that use those fears to take advantage of them.
So it's not just about being afraid, it's about how that fear gets used or makes people do things that could actually hurt them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just individuals we have to worry about.
Right.
When misinformation spreads to a lot of people, it can really damage trust in the sources that are actually reliable.
Like what?
Think about scientific organizations, government agencies, even good news sources. If people stop believing them, it gets really hard to face real problems and make good decisions as a society.
It's like that story about the boy who cried wolf, but like cosmically. If people keep hearing about fake threats all the time, they might just tune out the real warnings about climate change, pandemics, other stuff we actually need to pay attention to.
Exactly. It creates a climate of distrust, like cynicism, that makes it hard to even talk about these problems and work together to fix them.
And with so many people getting their news from social media these days, it feels almost impossible to know what's real anymore. You have algorithms designed to keep you scrolling, clickbait headlines, and it's like everyone's suddenly an expert, whether they know what they're talking about or not.
You're right. It's tough. We're basically swimming in information, but still thirsty for knowledge,
Yeah.
And we humans are wired to look for patterns and explanations, even when we're not sure about things.
Right.
So it makes sense why something like Nibiru gets so much attention.
It's like our brains want to find connections, even when they aren't really there.
Yeah,
We need a story that makes sense of all the craziness.
exactly.
But if we're not careful, those stories can take us down some pretty bad paths.
Absolutely.
So what can we do about it? How do we push back against all this misinformation without being like those annoying fact checkers on every comment section?
Well, I think it starts with education. Teaching people, especially young people, how to really think about the information they come across.
So like teaching them how to spot a fake news story or figure out if a video is real or not?
Yes, it's about having media literacy skills, knowing how information is made, how it spreads, and how it can be manipulated. It's about being able to tell if a source is trustworthy and if it has any biases.
So we empower people to fact check themselves, basically.
Exactly, instead of just believing everything they see online.
That makes sense. But what about the people who are already totally convinced about Nibiru? How do you even reach those who think a planet is about to slam into Earth?
That's a tough one.
Right.
When people are really stuck in their beliefs, it's not enough to just tell them facts or debunk myths.
Right.
You have to understand why they believe it, like what emotional need that belief is fulfilling.
So it's like we need to be space therapists.
Yeah.
Help people work through their worries about the universe.
Yeah, and find healthy ways to deal with uncertainty. It's about being empathetic, listening to people's concerns, and talking to them with respect and understanding. And sometimes it's about gently guiding them towards sources that are more credible, offering different explanations, and encouraging them to think critically about the evidence.
So we're like cosmic tour guides,
I like that.
showing people the amazing things in the universe that we know are real, hopefully getting them curious about real science, and steering them away from those exciting but ultimately empty promises of conspiracy theories.
Exactly. Because in the end, the real universe is so much more fascinating and awesome than any made-up doomsday scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. We have black holes, warping space and time, galaxies crashing into each other with incredible energy, planets around other stars that might have life we can't even imagine.
It's crazy. We're basically living in a science fiction movie, but it's all real.
Right.
Why waste time on conspiracy theories when we have these real mysteries to solve and so much to learn about the universe?
Exactly. And anyone can be a part of this journey. You don't need a fancy degree to appreciate how amazing the universe is. There are so many resources out there, books, documentaries, websites, even apps that can help you explore the cosmos without leaving your house.
It's like having the whole universe at your fingertips, ready to be explored. But before we get too lost in space, let's bring it back down to Earth for a minute. We've talked about the dangers of misinformation and how important it is to think critically, but I'm curious, what are some examples of how believing in Nibiru or stuff like that has actually caused harm?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that while we're having fun discussing this topic, we need to be careful about information, especially dramatic claims that aren't backed up by evidence.
Definitely. Critical thinking is key, everyone.
Yeah.
Don't just believe everything you see online or what that one weird relative says. Do your own research, check your sources, and be willing to question what you're told.
And remember, the universe is full of amazing things that are real, just waiting to be discovered and understood. So don't get caught up in the hype of conspiracy theories. Focus that energy on exploring the incredible cosmos that we know for sure is out there.
Right. We have black holes, neutron stars, planets around other stars, galaxies everywhere. The real universe is way cooler than some made-up doomsday planet. So grab your telescopes, deep divers, and let's explore. And that brings our deep dive into the world of Nibiru to an end.
It's been really interesting looking at the science, the psychology, the culture, and the consequences of this whole myth.
We've busted some myths, challenged some ideas, and hopefully got some people thinking critically.
Yeah, and most importantly, we've reminded ourselves that the universe is full of amazing things that are real, waiting for us to discover and understand.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep looking up at those stars.
Absolutely. And speaking of our place in the universe, there's one more thing about Nibiru that I think we should talk about. The cultural side of these apocalyptic beliefs.
Oh yeah, we talked about why people believe these things, but we haven't really talked about how they fit into the bigger picture of human history and storytelling.
Right, throughout history, different cultures have had their own myths and beliefs about the end of the world or some big change in reality.
Like those old stories about floods, fires, battles between gods and monsters. I love those.
Exactly. And while the details of the stories are different, there are usually common themes, like the idea that time goes in cycles, the fight between good and evil, and the possibility of starting over or being reborn.
So Nibiru is basically a modern version of those old myths.
You could say that.
Mm.
It's a way to express our worries about the future, our hopes for a better world, and our fascination with the unknown parts of the universe.
It's like we're all part of this big cosmic story, constantly searching for meaning and a purpose in a universe that can feel huge and uncaring.
That's a great way to put it. And while the idea of a rogue planet wiping us out might not be scientifically possible, it shows how much we need to understand the world, to find our place in everything, and to deal with those big questions that humans have been asking for centuries.
It's a reminder that we're all connected, not just because we're all human, but because we all have this curiosity about the universe and want to understand where we fit in.
Exactly.
But before we get too deep into philosophy, let's bring it back to Earth for a sec. We've talked about the dangers of misinformation and how important it is to think critically, but I'm curious, what are some specific examples of how belief in Nibiru or similar theories has actually caused harm?
Well, there have been cases where people have made really big life choices based on their fear of Nibiru,
Oh, wow.
like selling everything they own, leaving their homes, even trying to end their own lives. And sadly, there have been people who use these fears to make money, running scams or selling things that prey on people's anxieties.
That's really sad. It just shows how misinformation isn't just about spreading lies, it's about the real harm that can come from it. And sometimes that harm can be truly awful.
It is. And it highlights how important it is to be careful about what we believe ourselves,
Yeah.
and also to think about how our own beliefs and actions might affect others.
That's something to think about.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to be careful with information, to share knowledge in a responsible way, and to challenge misinformation when we see it. But it's also important to remember that people who believe these theories aren't necessarily dumb or easily fooled.
Absolutely.
Often they're just looking for answers, meaning, or a connection in a world that can feel really complicated and uncertain.
Exactly. So how do we reach those people? How do we connect with them without dismissing their worries or making them feel judged?
Right.
I think it starts with empathy. We shouldn't talk to them like we're better than them or make fun of them.
Yeah.
We need to listen to their stories, understand why they believe what they believe, and acknowledge their fears.
So it's about creating a space where they feel safe to share their thoughts without being attacked or ridiculed.
Exactly.
And maybe through those conversations, we can gently steer them towards a more, I don't know, evidence-based way of thinking about the universe.
Exactly. It's about planting those seeds of curiosity, inviting them to explore the real wonders that science has shown us, and fostering a love of learning that goes beyond the sensational claims and conspiracy theories.
It's like we're all on this big cosmic journey together.
We are.
And some of us might need a little guidance along the way. But in the end, the destination is the same for all of us, a deeper understanding of the universe and our place within it.
That's beautifully said.
Thanks. And speaking of our place in the universe, there's one more aspect of the Nibiru phenomenon that I think we should touch on. the cultural significance of these apocalyptic beliefs.
Oh, you're right. We talked about the psychological reasons behind these beliefs, but we haven't really explored how they fit into the bigger picture of human history and storytelling.
Exactly. Throughout history, different cultures have developed their own unique mythologies and beliefs about the end of the world or a major transformation of reality.
Right.
Like, those ancient stories about floods, fires, or epic battles between gods and monsters. I love those.
Exactly. And while the specifics of those stories vary, they often share common themes. The idea of a cyclical nature of time, the struggle between good and evil, and the possibility of renewal or rebirth.
So, Nibiru is kind of like a modern take on those ancient myths, a story that taps into our primal fears and fascination with the unknown.
You could say that. It's a way of expressing our anxieties about the future, our hopes for a better world, and our enduring fascination with the mysteries of the universe.
It's like we're all part of this grand cosmic narrative, constantly searching for meaning and purpose in a universe that can often feel vast and indifferent.
Beautifully put. And while the idea of a rogue planet causing our demise might be scientifically implausible, it speaks to our deep-seated need to make sense of the world around us, to find our place in the grand scheme of things, and to grapple with the existential questions that have haunted humanity for centuries.
It's a reminder that we're all connected, not just by our shared humanity, but by our shared curiosity about the universe and our desire to understand our place within it. But before we get too philosophical, let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. We've covered a lot of ground today, from debunking scientific claims to exploring the psychological and cultural significance of Nibiru.
We have. And I think it's important to reiterate that while we've been having fun exploring this topic, it's crucial to approach information with a healthy dose of skepticism, especially when it comes to sensationalized claims that lack evidence.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is key, folks. Don't just believe everything you read online or hear from your eccentric uncle who lives in a bunker. Do your own research, consult reputable sources, and be willing to question what you're being told.
And remember, the universe is full of real wonders waiting to be discovered and understood. So instead of getting caught up in the hype of conspiracy theories, why not channel that curiosity and wonder into exploring the vast and incredible cosmos that we know exists?
Right. We've got black holes, neutron stars, exoplanets, and galaxies galore. The real universe is far more fascinating than any fictional doomsday scenario. So grab your metaphorical telescope, deep divers, and let's explore the cosmos together. And that, my friends, brings our deep dive into the world of Nibiru to a close.
It's been a fascinating journey exploring the science, the psychology, the culture, and the consequences of this enduring myth.
We've debunked claims, challenged assumptions, and hopefully sparked some critical thinking along the way.
And most importantly, we've reminded ourselves that the universe is full of real wonders, waiting to be discovered and understood. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep looking up at the stars.
Until next time, deep divers, stay curious.
All right, so we're back, and we've been talking about all this Nibiru stuff.
We have. But one thing I'm still kind of stuck on is we keep saying that believing this Nibiru thing can be harmful.
Right.
But what does that actually look like? Like in real life?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's one thing to talk about the idea of it,
Yeah.
but it's totally different to actually see how this wrong information messes with people's lives. And there are a lot of examples, sadly, when it comes to Nibiru.
So, what are some real-world examples?
Well, one of the biggest things is how it affects people emotionally. Imagine thinking that some huge disaster is about to happen because of this rogue planet. That fear can be really powerful.
Yeah, I bet. It would be like always waiting for something terrible to happen.
Exactly. And for some people, that fear leads them to do some extreme things.
Really?
Yeah, like some people actually sell everything they own, leave their homes, and move to the middle of nowhere trying to escape what they think is coming.
Wow, that's taking those doomsday prepper shows seriously.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it shows just how much this misinformation can affect people's minds. And sometimes it gets even worse.
Oh, no.
There have been cases where people have tried to end their own lives because they were so hopeless and in despair, thinking that this apocalyptic event was going to happen.
That's so awful. It really makes you think. These aren't just stories. They can have really terrible consequences for people and their families.
You're right. And it's not just about individuals either.
Right, right.
Believing in Nibiru can affect society as a whole.
Okay, how so?
Well, it can make people lose trust in the sources that are actually reliable.
Like what? What sources?
Think about Science organizations, government groups, even trustworthy news sources.
Hmm.
If people think there's this big secret about a planet, they're not going to believe anything those official sources say.
That makes sense.
And that lack of trust can lead to a lot of problems. Like it becomes harder to deal with the real problems in the world, like climate change, diseases, economic issues, because people won't believe the people who are actually trying to help.
So it's kind of like if you keep yelling fire when there's no fire, people will eventually stop listening, even when there really is a fire.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to think critically about the information we see, be careful about what we believe, and be aware of those dramatic stories that don't have any real evidence.
Okay, so how do we handle this? How do we deal with all this misinformation, especially with something as attention-grabbing as Nibiru?
I think a few things are important. First, we need to be a little skeptical. Don't just believe everything you see or hear. Ask questions, look for different viewpoints, and think about where the information is coming from.
So, like, be a detective for information.
Exactly. Second, we need to get better at understanding how media works.
Okay.
This means knowing how information is made, shared, and sometimes manipulated. It also means being able to recognize bias, both in ourselves and in the things we read and watch.
So it's not just about what we believe, but also why we believe it and who's trying to influence us.
Exactly. And finally, and this is important, remember that people who believe in these conspiracy theories aren't necessarily dumb or gullible.
Right.
A lot of times they're just trying to find answers, meaning, or a sense of belonging in a world that feels really complicated and uncertain.
So it's like they're looking for a story that makes sense of all the chaos. And sometimes a conspiracy theory, even a crazy one like Nibiru, can do that.
Yeah, you're right. So instead of dismissing their beliefs or making fun of them, let's try to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Listen to what they're worried about, talk to them with respect, and maybe, just maybe, we can gently help them see the universe based on real evidence.
That's a really good point. It's about finding common ground, not building walls between us, and remembering that we're all on this journey together, even if we take different paths sometimes.
I like that. And ultimately, the universe is huge and full of amazing things. There's no need to make up threats when there's so much real beauty and mystery out there to discover.
You're absolutely right. So, to wrap things up, let's give our listeners a little cosmic homework assignment.
I love that.
Instead of getting caught up in the latest Nibiru craze, why not learn about the real wonders of the universe?
Yes.
Read a book about black holes, watch a show about planets around other stars, download an app that shows you the night sky. Trust me, the real truth is out there, and it's way more interesting than any made-up planet that's going to destroy us.
And who knows? Maybe someone listening right now will make the next big discovery, find a new planet, or solve a mystery that's been stumping scientists for years. The possibilities are endless, and the universe is waiting for us to explore it.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the cosmos, deep divers. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and don't ever stop asking questions.